Hi, I'm Ernie Conover, and I teach woodworking. And of the thousands of friends that I've made in my teaching over the years, the single biggest problem they all faced was sharpening their tools correctly. Especially with hand tools, if your tools aren't absolutely razor sharp, they're not going to work properly. The best solution that I've found over the years that the average person can get their mind around and get their tools quickly sharpened and get down to the business of woodworking is a wet sharpening machine. There's nothing new about these machines. I can remember my grandfather having one with a wheel on it this big around that would originally been treadle driven, but he'd put a little electric motor on. And was in a water bath, and he would sharpen all of his tools on it, and we all always marveled at how sharp they always were. With a wet sharpening machine, the advantages are that one, the wheel turns fairly slowly, between 80 and 150 RPMs on this one. And that means that things happen slowly, so you have a lot of control over them. The second thing is, of course, that the water bath that the wheel runs in is always going to keep the tool cooled so that you can't draw the temper in it. Always a problem with a normal bench grinder. While your initial investment in a wet sharpening machine is quite substantial, it is really not more money than you will probably spend on an array of stones and angle jigs to get your plane irons the right angle and so on. So you sort of buy it as a turnkey package. At Jet Tools, we have looked at the wet sharpening machine carefully, and we've tried to incorporate a number of groundbreaking features into it that will get the job done right for you. Let's take a look at a few of those features in detail. The first improvement we made was to the drivetrain. If we remove the leather strop here, we can actually see the drivetrain. And the first thing we did was totally enclose it. The motor is enclosed inside the machine, which protects you from being pinched by it and also keeps it from getting water on it. The shaft of the motor actually rubs directly against this rubber tire, and that's what gives you the slowest speed. It's common for these machines to develop slippage as this tire glazes. And so we've built a torque adjustment into it right here, which will allow you to put any amount of force against that motor shaft and keep it driving smoothly. We've also built a nice little storage drawer into the base of the machine here where we can put things like the stone grater, our most commonly used sharpening jigs, and the sharpening paste away and safely out of the way. Our angle jig is magnetic and will stick to any ferrous metal surface so that we can stick it out of the way but have it always handy and ready to use. We've also put what I call good water management into the system. We have deflection shields here that trough the water back into the trough and keep it where it needs to be and not on your bench and top of the machine, etc. Also, the wheel, it comes at 10 inches in diameter, but it wears as you dress it and you use it. As it wears, you really need to increase the speed, about 10% for each 1 inch of wear. So we've put a very nice little variable speed control right here, which you can vary the speed between 90 and 150 RPMs and allow for the wheel wear as it wears. It's also nice to be able to just crank that speed up when you want to remove a lot of materials, such as when you're adjusting the angle on a plane blade or a big chisel. Of the wide range of accessories available for this machine, one that I really like is the sub base. It allows us to bring the machine up to a more convenient working height. You can lock the machine to the base for travel, and the base has two further drawers right here for storage of more accessories. All of the drawers on this machine are spring-loaded so that they lock shut and won't come out when you're moving the machine. There's also a very nice place to store the cord here so that it is handy and out of the way, and there's a very nice little clip right here that you simply clip it to the cord itself and it'll stay there. Finally, there's a very nice cover for the machine, which has a cutout with Velcro so that it locks down around the handle and you can carry the machine safely and keep it clean. Now that you're the proud owner of one of these machines, let's look at setting it up. It's shipped pretty much ready to go from the factory. The only thing you have to do is take it out of the box and first install the wheel. You do that by removing this nut right here and washer. And this is a little plastic sleeve for shipping. You can just discard that. And you simply take the wheel out of the bottom of the box and install it on the shaft. Replace the washer. Work the nut up tight and just lightly torque it. You next install the water tray, and the easy way to do that is bring it up and fit it into the notch right there like that, and then you can feel it engage in the back, and bingo, it's in place. You now fill your water trough, and there's a clear ledge down here that's the proper level. When you first fill this with water, however, these will soak up a good pint or two of water, and this level will drop quickly as you first irrigate the wheel. The next thing you need to do is install the bar, which all your jigs mount on. This can be installed in two places. There are some times when it's better to come off an edge, and other times it's better to go into an edge, and you use the two positions as is the needs of the jig you're using. You can then store the various accessories that come with the machine here away in the handy drawer, and store the angle jig right over here in its little place right here. No grinding wheel for any grinder is delivered from the factory perfectly round. So one of the most important accessories you can buy for your wet sharpener is a diamond truing jig. I have mine stored in the accessory drawer right here. And before I use it, I'm going to take a little paraffin and grease up the bar here so that everything slides a little nicer on it. And I'm going to take this yoke and I'm going to start it on right here like that, and then put the diamond truing jig on. This is the diamond right here. And I will simply slide up here until I'm perfectly bracketing the wheel. And I'm going to then sort of adjust this until I'm tangent to the wheel, that this would form a tangent to the wheel. About like that. Lock it in place. And now I undo these two wheels and lower the bar until I can feel I'm just barely touching the wheel. Bring down the adjusting screw right here. Actually raise it back up so that I'm just barely in contact with it, and lock it in place. I now start up the machine, and I can run it back and forth across the wheel. You can see how out of round it is. I'm working from the back of the machine. You would normally do this from this side, but I'm doing it so you would have a realistic interpretation of how it would be in your own shop. And I'm going to keep doing this, and as I true it up a little bit, I can undo these two nuts, bring this up just a trifle, retighten them, and now take a heavier cut. And you can hear it coming round. It takes you about 5 minutes to do that. You can go have a cup of coffee, and when you come back, I'll be done. There, it's taken me a few minutes, and don't be surprised if it actually looks rougher than when you started, but that's normal. We have now brought that wheel perfectly round, and we can take our diamond truing jig off and set it aside. I'd like to talk to you a second about the chemistry of this wheel, which was a year in the making. First of all, it has the right friability. And friability comes from the Latin word to crumble. And it means that the glue that holds this wheel together has the right consistency such that when the particle gets dull, it will break away because the load is higher on it. It's now dull. and a fresh sharp particle under it comes up, and that makes the wheel cut much faster and more efficiently. Also, we have a device here called a stone grater, which is a piece of synthetic stone that we can now hold against the stone, the rough side or the smooth side. And depending on which side we use, we can give the wheel a characteristic that is different. We can have a very coarse wheel here to grind fastly and a much finer wheel to grind more carefully with less marks. So by how we dress this wheel, we can change the characteristics of its cutting. To use the stone grater, again, it would be from your side of the machine, but you simply place it against the wheel like this, and running it back and forth like so, we're going to stick with that until we have the wheel perfectly smooth. And I'm just getting to that point now. And I'd have a wheel that is about correct for initial sharpening of tools, establishing initial geometry. While you were away, to speed things up, I sped the machine up to full speed, and you notice we're just shy of the water coming out of the trough. And we started out at the low speed, which would be the correct speed for a new wheel. Also, the diamond truing has to be done periodically. Later on, as the wheel wears or gets material in it, an old tool room guy would say the wheel is pinned, then you will get your diamond dressing tool out and redress the wheel, bringing it back absolutely parallel with the bar, because all of our jigs depend on that geometry being parallel to each other. Once you have your stone trued, the next thing you need to do is set up the strop, really what I call condition the strop. The strop is no more than a piece of leather wrapped around a plastic wheel, and it will be used to, just like a barber uses a strop to sharpen a straight razor. And we can put a paste on that comes with a machine. It's really a polishing paste right here, and we can simply squeeze it out onto the strop. But you'll find that this goes much better if you first condition the strop by putting some light oil on it. You can put a light machine oil like 3-in-1 oil, or even mineral oil from the drugstore will work very well. And all I'm going to do here is put a little bit of oil on it, like so. And I'm going to take my finger and kind of work that in. And there, I've got it nice and oily. Once I have that, remove the excess here, and I'll now put my polish on, like so. But by oiling up that strop good first, it saves a lot of material. On a dry leather strop, you can squeeze a whole tube of this into it in a week and it's just gone. Where if you oil it good first, you'll get a nice ready to work wheel that cuts better, cuts faster, and you don't waste all that material. Also, if you want your wheel to be a little more aggressive, straight valve grinding compound works very well on these. It's a slurry of oil and carborundum powder. It's available in grits. This happens to be a 220 grit, which is about right, but that will cause your strop to cut much more aggressively. Now that we have the strop conditioned, let's talk about another strop that we can add as an optional accessory. And by removing the nut and the washer, we can then put this outboard secondary strop on, like so. We're going to just snug it up with a wrench, replace the washer here, and replace the nut. And now we would condition that strop with oil and then compound, just like we did the main strop. And we now have a specialized strop that is very handy for odd-shaped items, such as little carving tools, which can be done on the outside here and here. Same with our gouge. We can go in with most any sweep and get the outside of it, and then the inside. On mild sweep gouges, of course, we'll use this one for the outside. and even V-tools like so. Now, I'm on the wrong side of the strop. I ought to, of course, be working from your side to be stropping off of the edge, but you get the idea. Any discussion of sharpening has to start with a question, what is sharp? Well, sharp occurs when two planes, or in the case of something coming off a wet sharpening machine, two arcs meet perfectly. And the meet perfectly is the conundrum here, because steel has the annoying tendency to want to form a thin foil edge, which will then roll over and create a radius. Names for that over the years have been a foil edge, a feather edge. They all mean the same thing. And during the sharpening process, we use progressively finer and finer abrasives to, one, shape the edge to the shape we want it, and then refine that edge to a mirror polish for the very finest of edges. A mirror polish occurs when the scratch marks in the surface become smaller than the wavelength of visible light. When you can see your face in the edge, it's perfect. There are occasions, however, when we don't want an edge of this refinement. In cases like that would be scissors and kitchen and pocket knives. There we're better with a fairly rough grind, which creates the equivalent of a serrated edge, so that when we draw the knife along like this, it severs fibers and rope, meat, things like this. For edges where them, such as carving tools, bench chisels, etc., we want that very highly refined finish, that polished edge, and that's what we get in the process called honing. The process of initially shaping the edge we call grinding. The jet wet sharpening machine accomplishes grinding or shaping of your tools with the wet wheel here, and the honing, refining of your edge up to a polished edge is accomplished by the leather strop over here. It will handle a wide variety of sizes and shapes, anything from this old carbon steel slick that Grandpa used to build a homestead and would be damaged by overheating, down to this cryogenically treated A2 Hawk plane blade that is the most sophisticated of modern steels. We should talk a minute about the angles you commonly grind tools to. About the finest angle we use is 15 degrees, which would be carving tools. If we go any finer than 15 degrees, the edge would get so dainty that it would actually break off rather than be viable. And with carving tools, we're mostly carving straight-grained, soft woods in favorable directions, and we tap them with mallets, but we don't do much severe prying or anything like that. For bench chisels, this is a Japanese bench chisel, somewhere in the 25 to 30 degree range is where we like to be. That bigger cross-section in the edge allows us to drive this into harder woods that may contain knots and things like that, and the edge will hold up in service. For most woodworking tools, plane blades included, they fall into the same category. 25 to 30 degrees is a real good grind angle. Now, with a hollow grind of the wet sharpening machine, you may want to increase that 2 or 3 degrees to allow for the hollow grind, because most of these old rules of thumb are from when we did it on stones with flat grinds and not hollow grinds. Finally, you would have chisels for very severe service, such as this timber framing chisel. And here we might be using very big mallets, or even the trusty commander here to really drive that chisel through a piece of oak with a big knot in it. And here we're going to increase the angle to 35 degrees to have a lot of strength in that edge. There's also scrapers, and scrapers are really a special case. They're either grind 90 straight across or with a little bit of relief in them, so they come out to about 65 degrees. This is a scraper for a Stanley 112, and that is ground to that 65-degree angle and then honed a bit and then burnished to create a burr. For other tools, there are special cases. Turning tools are a good case in point, and the angles of gouges especially are all over the map. And for those kinds of situations, we have a whole array of specialized jigs that solve the angle problem for you. Supplied with the machine are two excellent jigs which will help you to get the correct geometry ground into your tools, a very important point. Often it's good to know what you have on a tool. Here's an old chisel we bought at a flea market, and we can take this little angle jig right here and by adjusting this wheel, adjust it to the tool, and we find out that we have about a 28 degree grind on this tool. Optimally, a bench chisel would be about 25 degrees, but because this machine grinds a hollow grind, and that classic angle is with a flat grind on a flat stone, you're better to increase the degree of grind about 2 or 3 degrees with a wet sharpening machine. So it's about right now. The second tool is this angle jig, which is a very handy tool. It first of all has a scale here, which I'm setting right there to 10 inches, which is the diameter of a brand new wheel. As that wheel wears, as you dress it and use it, you can slide this over as far as 6 inches and allow for wheel wear. The second is this, which we can actually set. I'm going to set 28 degrees here and lock that wheel. And now I am set to measure the angle of anything I'm grinding by setting it on the wheel and bringing it against the back of the tool right there. Let's actually see that in action by getting out another jig that is supplied with the machine. And that is just a little holder here that we can put the tool in like so. We're going to slide it against that side so that it's square. We're going to hold it down with our finger and tighten these two knobs. The big thing you must be aware of is not to over tighten this outboard knob, or you'll actually cock the tool in the jig and grind it crooked. If you bring about equal torque on both sides, it'll work just fine. If you are grinding crooked, loosening or tightening this screw will correct the problem. I now put it on the bar like so, and I simply place this on top of it like so. You can see a little light gap here. I now will bring this up just slightly. There, lock it down, and I now have a perfect 28 degrees. I can start up my machine right back here. Now you notice that I'm putting good firm pressure with my thumbs, fair amount of pressure, but sliding the tool evenly back and forth so that I even out the wear on my wheel and don't cup the center of it. We could actually speed this machine up now and get this job done a little faster because we have a fair amount of material to take off. And you can see how, because we have perfect geometry built into the machine, that we are actually squaring this chisel up. It came from the flea market ground out of square, and we're actually bringing the bevel back square and uniform. This is a good chance to see the good water management here, that we have a nice gutter here which is redirecting the water down into the trough. The trough is built with nice big gutter edges that keep the debris going back down into the base of the trough. I've now ground long enough that I have a burr on the edge, and it's time to go to the next process, which is honing. We can hone this in two ways. One, the bevel we can do on the leather strop over here. Now we're going to open our drawer and take out some of our paste and apply a little of that on here just so that it's nice and ready to go. And then we're going to undo the bar and move this over here. You always want to make it arranged from this side so that you're stropping off an edge. If you try to strop into an edge, the edge is going to dig in and catch, and while you may not be hurt, it certainly will ruin the strop. So we now come down like this with that edge, and we're going to slide this in until we're just tangent to that, like so. Just looking at it sideways, we can tell. We now start up the machine, and we're going to just go across there like that, stropping that. And while that's brought this to a beautiful polish, it's not the best thing in the world to do the back of the tool with a strop, because you'll lose flatness and wash it out. So what I do is simply dip it in water in the tool tray like that and go on to a ceramic stone like this. You can use any polishing stone. I like ceramic stones for this particular process because they never cup. They're always dead flat, so I can quickly flatten the back and bring it to a polish. And I now, by alternating between the strop here and the stone for the back here, do that 2 or 3 times, I'm left with a very sharp razor edge that'll take hair right off my arm, like so. The straight edge jig, which comes with the machine, is one of the most useful of all jigs because it can handle everything from a little tiny shoulder plane blade here, a spoke shave blade, a number 3 blade up to a number 8 blade, and of course it would handle a number 1 blade, and chisels of just about any size, which you've already seen us do. Should be mentioned that many of the jigs of the competition will not handle the number 8 blade, which this one will handle quite handily. When you're sharpening sizes 1 through 6, you usually want them ground so that they're a little bit convex, what we call some camber in the grind. The number 8, of course, we do want to be ground straight across because that is the jointer plane. Same with the number 7. To get a little bit of camber in the smaller sizes, the best way to do it is to stick the blade just as far out of the jig as you can, like so. Pinch it between your fingers, tighten the 2 knobs equally, so you have equal torque on them. We'll now get out our angle jig, which we've set to 28 degrees. As we mentioned, we want to add about 3 degrees to whatever setting we would normally use. 25 normally for plane, but 28 because it's hollow ground. And we'll just come up like that, get it in the right place like so. And now to get our camber, we'll start up the machine. And we'll just push a little harder on the right side and then alternately a little harder on the left, and alternating back and forth like that, we can actually get a little bit of camber. And because we have the blade sticking a long way out, there's enough flex in the system that we can introduce a little bit of camber there and get the grind we want. Sharpening carving gouges is always problematic. And our wet sharpening machine has a variety of tools to help you with this task. First of all, we're going to move the bar out here because with very thin edge carving tools, most carving tools are ground to around 15 degrees on their edge, which makes them very thin in this area. You're better to sharpen coming off of the wheel than onto it. It's easier to control it. Now, we have a little gouge jig right here, which is easy to use. You simply slip it over the tool like that and tighten it up like so. And I'm going to just sort of eyeball till it's nice and square in there and lock it down like that. Now I can use this to guide my tool and keep it the same length from the wheel. I now simply loosen these two screws and I get out my angle jig and I'm going to reset this to 15 degrees, but remember this is a hollow grind, so we're going to set it to a little more than 15, like something like 17 or 18 degrees. And we can simply come around like this and adjust this bar until we're there. Good. Lock it down like so. Put our jig away. Start up the machine. Now this is a good place where we can actually slow our machine down a little here to not get out of hand on us, and we just simply come in here like this. And it's best to always try to move around a bit on the wheel like this so you don't cup it in the center. And I'm sort of distributing the wear out on the wheel and trying to grind every place on the edge uniformly. And you can see that I have a nice bevel going on the back of it right in here. I'm grinding just in the right spot, and I'm going to bring that to a nice edge here in a second. All right, I can actually see that I have burr, and I can feel that I have burr breaking over the edge. I've ground out from the heel to the edge. And in this way, it's very handy for things like a score. If you have something that's working properly and you just want to keep the same angle, a good trick is just taking a magic marker and scribbling on an edge like so, so that you blacken it up a bit. And we would now take this and loosen it up, and looking sideways, we're going to come down till we feel we have the right angle touching the wheel. Make sure everything's nice and firm. Turn the machine on, and now just setting it right there and bringing it down in contact, we can get a very nice. And we're going to come around and look and see where we're removing material. We're actually removing mostly at the front edge here, So we would want to tip back just a little bit, so we can simply take this and move it just a shade like so. Come in here like this. And you can see we're removing material now in the correct spot. And now by simply carefully turning this like so, we can grind the whole tool out to a very uniform angle, and then we could come over onto our strop like so and strop it out. The rest is also good for turning scrapers, and here we would bring them around like that, about like that, and I would bring it down close to the, so that I have good support like that. And now I can simply start up the machine. Notice how I'm working smoothly and uniformly, also trying to even out my wear on my stone as much as I can. And I simply do that until I have raised the burr, very nice one, and I'm ready to go to the lathe and do some big faceplate work here. It can be used for form scrapers too, and if you just keep this set up during a turning session, you can maintain the same angle and walk over and very quickly sharpen your scrapers. Like so, nice and sharp. Our simple platform jig can be used in combination with another new jig which attaches to the main bar like this. And we can put this on like so, getting it pretty square to the side of the wheel. And this will allow us to use the side of the wheel now to grind things like card scrapers and scrapers for a 112, which normally you file before you burnish them. In this case, we can simply start up our machine like so and set our card scraper here and just and this is a form scraper, which is very problematic to file, and yet we're grinding it easily here. And of course, if we were going to do our 112, we would change the angle of this to about 25 degrees like this, looking at the edge of it here. It has relief in that direction. We grind it like this. Once we have it ground to a nice edge, we'd go to our ceramic stone again. And we just set these scrapers down and we remove all the burr. The nice thing about ceramic stones, they can be used dry, so we have a little water from the process there. It's great, it makes it work even better. But if it's dry, that's good too, it doesn't matter. And once we have the burr removed, like so, we would now put this in a vise and go to a burnish. And with a burnish, we come along here on the edges like that, putting a good deal of pressure down. We're going to roll a nice sharp burr on there, which then makes it into a nice card scraper, and we can do some useful work. The flat rest is good for a variety of turning tools. The roughing out gouge is easily sharpened right here by adjusting this rest so that we're grinding about a 25-degree angle at the edge. and just rolling it back and forth like so. Once it's sharp, we can go over onto the strop right here and strop the outside and then the inside on the auxiliary strop. It's also excellent for parting tools, which we can just simply set down and present and sharpen like so. You can also do skews and beading and parting tools, although that's a little more problematic. The problem here is that you really can't hollow grind these tools or they won't work correctly. They need a flat grind. And the only way I've found to do that is use the side of the wheel. And I do that by setting it on the flat rest like this, kind of eyeballing down like that. And now just sort of sliding it back and forth and getting a nice flat grind on the edge. You can see where I've got one started there. And I can do the skew in the same way. And this gives me a little bit of support here. This is really mostly a kind of a job you're doing by eye or feel, but it will work and give you the flat grind that you need. For those of you with a pioneering spirit, we even have an axe grinding jig. This is something I pick up down at Lowe's, and we simply can put this in like here. I do like to grind into the edge for axes, and adjusting it to the proper angle, I can very easily come around like this. Reversing the tool, I can come around like this to the other edge. And with a few minutes work, I can have a perfect edge on my axe. And I'm ready to go out and, just as the Vikings did, build a ship with this simple axe. It's good for hewing, and it could be used this way for fine work. A difficult thing to sharpen is scissors, often called shears, and this is because the two blades go by each other in a shear cut. They are difficult to handhold to sharpen, and we have a very neat jig that will solve your scissor sharpening problem for you. We have this Teflon coated plate here that you put on the bar like so. And you have this that will hold large or small scissors. You simply put them in here like this. Open the blade up first. Once you have it about right, tighten it up here. Get it parallel to the edge. There we go. And we are now ready to sharpen like so. This is a case where you usually want to follow the edge that the factory put on there. It's also a case where you do not want to refine this edge greatly. You do not want it to be polished. You want it to be a coarse grind, because that is going to grab fabric or paper and hold it in place while it is sheared in half and not allow it to slip out of the scissors. So what we do now is put that edge with a magic marker on there, and we sort of adjust this till we think it's about right, about, let's say, there. And now we're going to just turn that stone over by hand and see how we're taking that off. We're just about perfect there. It's better to be lucky than good, is what I always say. And we'll turn on the machine. And now all we have to do is just slide that across like that, holding it against our plate there. It slides nicely because it's coated with a Teflon coating. And bingo, we've got a really nice grind there. We're seeing light. We would now just reverse this. Like so. And we'll do this half. Nice grind. Remove the scissors. And we'll now test them. This is a piece of paper towel, and as you can see, it cuts beautifully. The gouges, the spindle gouge and the bowl gouge, are the workhorses of turning. The spindle gouge is the grubstake of a turner, and it's ground to about a 25 to 30 degree angle at the very tip with a fairly steep grind on the sides. It's an asymmetrical grind, so heretofore we've always had to grind them by feel or by eye. The bowl gouge is ground to about a 75 degree angle on the nose, although that can vary a lot depending on the situation that you're using it in, and about a 45 degree angle on the flanks. When I was a boy, we would learn to sharpen these by simply putting them on a bar type rest like this and doing all this by feel or by eye like this. And that was difficult to do consistently. You usually came up with so many facets on your tool that you made a diamond merchant envious. About 15 or 20 years ago, a man in California named Jerry Glazer, who also makes this fine gouge, developed this jig, and it has a pivot point. You would actually put a block of wood on the floor in front of your grinder and mount your gouge like this in it, and it would allow you to pivot it in front of the grinder. And you control the nose grind by lengthening and shortening the rod, and the side grind by how you articulate this neck. We looked at that jig and decided that it could be done very simply with a much smaller package. So we have these two parts here that will allow us to articulate here to get the side grind right, and to move our bar back and forth with this to get the nose angle right. Let's look in detail how these work. Sharpening of turning gouges with our jig is somewhat recipe driven, and the first thing you have to do is mount the gouge in the gooseneck. And you do that by simply setting it down like this and tightening that down. And we want it to stick out of the gooseneck a like amount each time, what we're going to call protrusion. So I use a square, and I've found with gouges that for me, 2 1/4 inches seems to work about right. Now, turners are rather individual about how they grind their tools, so you may find one that's slightly different. We then mount this little pocket right here on the bar, like so, and you want to try to get that as vertical as possible. Now, by sliding this back and forth, we can control the angle. I do this by starting out by simply putting my gouge down and looking sideways like this and getting it to where I can see the nose is in pretty good contact with the wheel. Again, when you're turning, you usually set this up at the beginning of your turning session, and you're going to leave it set up so that as long as you get the same protrusion out of the gooseneck, you can come back and grab the same angle. I'm now going to use my angle jig, which I've set to about 28 degrees here, and I can come in here and double check that I have the correct angle, which I do. I now simply start up the grinder and grind this. But for that, I should mention that we have a little detail here that the gooseneck is set to the first position here. Generally, I'm going to set it to a steeper incline for spindle gouges and a more obtuse incline for bowl gouges. And I'll show you that when I sharpen the bowl gouge. Going to turn on the machine. You're usually best with gouges, especially bowl gouges, to come off the edge. You may end up gouging the wheel if you try to go into the edge, so the bar should be in the front position here. And we can simply come in right like that. you see I'm quickly bringing this to a nice edge. Because it's wet sharpening, I don't raise any burr, and I won't draw the temper if it's a carbon steel tool. I can now go over onto my strop and strop the inside like so, and the outside. And with spindle tools, you'll find that the sharper you can get them, the better. You can get a finish off them that is superlative, and you won't have a lot of sanding to do if you get it to a razor sharp hone here on the leather strop. And I ought to be able to remove hair nicely from my arm, which I'm doing there. And we're all set to go turn a batch of spindles. Sharpening of the bowl gouge requires a different recipe. And of course, I'm going to start out by taking a marker and blackening up the very tip of this a little bit so I can see where my grind is. And I'm going to reset the gooseneck on my jig by loosening this with a hex key and moving this one graduation, which I've already done, to make this a little steeper than it was. I now also use a slightly different protrusion out of the jig. I use about 1 5/8 inches. I found to work pretty good for bowl gouges. There, that's correct. Now I simply put this down, and looking sideways like this, I'm just going to slide the bar out until I can see that pretty well go flat on the wheel. And locking this up, I'll just drag this like so. And yeah, I'm taking my magic marker away. I'm pretty well, looks about right. I might want to just tweak that out just a little bit further. About that much. Good. Now I'll start up the machine, and that's the whole right half of the tool. I'm doing like that. I'm keeping moving so that I get a nice well-worked edge. I'm taking metal away all the way to the bevel. That's good. And I have to step a little out of the way to do this side here. There. Great, I'm ready to go. And you can see that I was able to find the angle I had very quickly, and I didn't take very much off the tool. Bowl gouges are a tool that don't improve through honing. They actually work better if you take them right to the lathe straight from the grinder and don't hone them on the leather strap. Also, you will find that you want to tailor this edge a bit based on the type of work you're doing. I use a flatter nose because I tend to do deeper vessels through a smaller opening, and this allows it to stay on the bevel as it comes through this area in the bottom of the bowl. If you're doing a very open form like this, you'll be better to tailor that nose to about 45 degrees with the same angle on the sides, because you can stay on the bevel fine at 45 degrees. So as the vessel gets deeper and a smaller opening, you want to make it flatter on the nose. For more open vessels, more towards 45 degrees. The jet wet sharpening machine has a very nifty set of jigs for sharpening knives. Let's take a look at the smaller of the two jigs to start with. And it's good for small kitchen knives, small pocket knives, and it's very easy to use. You simply come on the back of your knife, kind of right near the back like that. Tighten it up. A little bit of adjustment here. And it'll be placed right up here to sharpen. Now, We do rough adjustment by raising and lowering the bar, and we can do fine adjustment by turning this, which will make this come further away or closer to. And it's especially nice if you have, say, a custom knife with a polished blade, because you remove all chance of you scratching the side of the blade during the sharpening process. We have another version, which is just a larger version of the jig, which is great for kitchen knives, larger carving knives and so on. And sometimes you might even have to move this down the blade to do it in 2 passes, but it'll accommodate a knife of any size. Also gives you an absolute uniform grind side to side. You want an inclusive angle in that 25 to 30 degree range, but as you can see that I can come right in here and very handily sharpen that like so. And I can simply turn it over and do it like that. And there, I have a very nice, credible job of sharpening the knife. I'm ready to go out and fillet a fish. The large knife jig is also very nice for sharpening draw knives, used in the same way as you would with a knife. You can just bring it down like this and run it across like this. You can also just hold both handles like this, controlling it nicely, resting it on the bar up there. Again, nice slow cut that you're not going to get away from you, and water fed so that you're never going to burn the tool up. And you can see the beautiful bevel angle I'm getting here as I go across there. There, I've got a burr, and I'm ready to hone this edge. This gives us a chance to show you an optional accessory called the auxiliary support, which goes under the main bar and allows you to build in the difference between the diameter of these 2 wheels right into the system. And I can now come right over here like this, and I'm already at the perfect angle, ready to strop this edge like this. The iron, or as Bailey defined it in his patent of 1865, the cutter of smoothing and block planes is best sharpened to a slightly convex shape. By so doing, when you plane with it, it will cut just shy of either edge and not leave a line in your work. The amount of crown or camber you put into the plane blade is dictated by the type of work you plan to do with it. You'd put more camber in a plane for rough cuts than you would for one with final cuts. We have a very exciting new jig called a camber jig, and it works much like the straight jig. However, it has a little fence here that we can adjust back and forth, and the idea is to get your plane well centered in the jig. And if you look down here, if you're looking at it from here, you can see that the slot is centered over that leg right there. And you use a shorter extension than you would with the other jig, putting it just a little ways out. And now you have 2 screws here with lock nuts here, and you can adjust any amount of camber that you want into your plane and rock it during the sharpening process and get just the right amount of camber into your blade, the same amount each time. So we simply now check it with our angle gauge like so, and turn the machine on. And now I just push down on the right side and then the left side like so, kind of easing it back between the two as I go back and forth like so. And there I am. It's nice and ground. I've got a nice burr, I now can go over to my strop. And of course, with the stropping exercise here, it doesn't matter so much that I put camber in it, but you know, it never hurts. It holds that amount that you have cranked in there. I'm now going to reach over here and get out my ceramic stone and sharpen the back of this blade like so. Always laying it dead flat on the stone, and that's going to hold my flatness. I can go back to the strop and refine that edge. And there, we can get out our square. And I have a very nice camber to that edge, which you can't see on camera, but it's just the right amount of convex shape. All right, I've done that one to do a narrower blade. Now I would just, again, by eye, center myself up over that middle leg there. And then I can just move the fence over like so. And as a double check on myself, there's a little scale down here, and I can kind of look and see if I have the equal number of graduations on both sides. I have 3 on one side and 4 on the other, so I'm going to move it over one notch. And there, that puts me perfectly centered between the two sides, and I can now lock it down and go to work and put some camber in this blade. I'd like to give you some maintenance tips on how to keep your machine running tip-top. The first is dressing the wheel. A good way to decide whether you need to dress the wheel is to bring the bar here very close to the wheel and sight down and see if it's parallel to the bar. If it's not, you need to dress. Also, if you run the machine with the bar close, you'll be able to see whether the wheel is out of round, another reason to dress. After dressing, of course, you smooth up the wheel with the stone grater. And throughout this video, I've used the coarse dressing for the tools in the interest of time. Things happen faster. It's the dressing you want for the initial sharpening of your tools, where you want to remove a lot of metal quickly. But subsequently, you're better to dress with the fine side of the grater, which will give you a finer cut and allow you to achieve a polish more quickly when you go to the strop. Speaking of the strop, we want to continue to put a little oil into it occasionally to keep it wet, a mineral oil, and we want to charge it with new compound frequently. I usually do it anytime the machine hasn't been used for a day or two. Also, you may encounter the motor slipping a bit due to the drive wheel getting glazed. And if it's slipping, even though you run the tension up and the torque adjustment here, a good thing to do is to sand this tire. And I do that with just a piece of 220 grit sandpaper on a wooden stick. By doing it with a stick, I will not get my fingers caught and pinch there in the drive wheel. So I just take this like this and sand that, and you see the rubber come off and it's reconditioned, ready to go. One little piece of maintenance you might have to do after a very long period of time is to replace the brushes in the DC motor. They are accessed by unscrewing this little cap. It is on a spring. You pull out the old brush and put a new one in. There's another brush 180 degrees from that. You do have to remove the motor from the machine to accomplish it. You can also have it done by a repair station if you wish. Finally, the water trough should be cleaned regularly. You get a lot of buildup from the stone in the trough, and don't pour that debris down your sink drain or it'll plug up the sink. Pour it outside is the best place for it. And also putting a magnet in the bottom of the trough will attract all the iron filings and keep them from coming up and contaminating your cut and make it cut a little bit better. Some of these things will just help it run a little bit better and make your life easier. We hope you have enjoyed this demonstration video on the jet wet sharpening machine. As you have seen, we have sharpened a wide variety of tools for both the home and the shop. This machine is not, however, intended as an end-all be-all for all your sharpening needs. As demonstrated, there are additional sharpening implements such as stones and files that you may want to add to your sharpening arsenal. We have shown you ways that work, but you will find ways that work better. Practice is important, and do not be afraid to experiment with techniques and additional methods or applications. The importance of sharpening your tools cannot be overstated. The goal of the jet wet sharpener is to make this essential process more effective and enjoyable, hence increasing the frequency in which you sharpen your tools. We know that woodworking is an art and passion, and that sharp tools dramatically enhance the experience while you work with the world's oldest building material.